Hi, I'm Doug Black. I'm editor-in-chief of Inside HPC. And today, as part of our series of interviews with the members of the Dell Technologies HPC community, we're speaking with Jay Boisseau. He is AI and HPC technology strategist for Dell Technologies. And Jay, it's a pleasure to see you again and be with you today.
It's good to see you again, even if virtually. Been a long time. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, great. So tell us a little about your role. Can we assume you're both an AI and HPC evangelist for Dell, as well as I would imagine a strategy, an internal technology manager guiding the company's product strategy?
Yeah, so I'd say my role is somewhere between what you might think of as something in the CTO office and somewhere, what you might think of as a product manager. So I work a lot. I work directly for Thierry Pellegrino, the vice president for the data-centric workloads and solutions team. I provide him and laterally Aaron Bewley and other folks in the product management team with guidance on what I think are the emerging and important trends in high performance computing solutions and increasingly also in AI trends as well. And then I work with the engineering staff, the CTO staff, and the product management staff to try to formulate the best priorities and the best pathways to solutions in those spaces. I do a lot, as you said, though, of evangelism. I work with a lot of strategic customers. And so, especially on the AI side, there's still a strong need to educate people about what it is, why it's important. There's a lot going on in that space. So trying to separate, the signal from the noise and help educate customers about AI overall, as well as our solutions and strategy in it.
Okay. So what are you focused on in those areas these days? What are you most excited about in this confluence of AI and HPC?
Well, I'm trying to think about what I can say here that's not non-disclosure for this public podcast. But the things I think I could say publicly, I'm really interested in on the AI side, the parts of AI that leverage HPC platforms. And we always talk about in the HPC field, we talk about the convergence of AI and HPC. And I've even given in and said those words myself, but it's not quite correct, right? I mean, AI is really a set of workloads, and HPC is really a systems and architecture approach to enabling performance. And it is true that some of those AI workloads need HPC underlying it in order to get the required performance. Deep learning training, of course, is the elevator pitch story for this. And so on the AI side, I tend to focus more on the parts of AI that need HPC, as well as the traditional HPC workloads that, of course, require HPC systems. Now, I am beginning to branch a little bit on the AI side and understand more about what our customers need from the trained models on the inferencing side, which is often not an HPC task for the application of those models, but it's just as important. It's the inferencing where the decision actually gets made that you train the model to make. So doing a little bit of everything in that AI space, but a lot of it is still focused on my historical background in the HPC space.
Okay, so within your areas of focus, how does Dell distinguish itself from its other vendor competitors?
Well, I think with Dell, for us, everybody says the customer's number one, and I do believe all us and our competitors all believe the customer's important. But I think Dell really goes above and beyond in trying to configure just the right solution for that customer. It delivers all the performance and all the capabilities they need for their workload at a cost-effective point with a reliable solution, no trade-offs, but no fluffing it up either. It is very much, about configuring the right kinds of solutions for the right workloads, for the right requirements, for the right needs. The history of Dell has always been about democratizing solutions from the time our founder made PCs out of a dorm room at UT. I think that's really where our strength is in high performance computing as one of the market leaders in that. We're a market leader really because we have such a broad base of customers in academia and industry and even in government that are using Dell systems of a variety of scales to do work. And I think that's how it's going to be in AI as well. And I think AI will in particular get to leverage the strong partner ecosystem that the company is known for developing and nurturing, that you can see in our HPC solutions. That becomes really important in AI solutions because that space has so many software players in it, so many chip vendors and accelerator producers in it. It's just a very big ecosystem right now, but Dell has a history of strong partnership in ecosystems. And I think this, plus that real customer focus to designing and configuring and delivering and supporting the right solution, I think that's how we'll really differentiate. Our HPC customers are very mature. They generally come to us knowing what they want, but that kind of experience that we're developing in our HPC and AI innovation lab gives us the ability to help in this emerging field. And I'm calling AI emerging, although you and I know the field has been around since, I guess it was named in 1956, but it's really emerging in the last few years at scale. And I think that we've got a lot to offer our customers in terms of configuring the right solutions for training and for inferencing.
Yeah, it's been around for a while, but it's also really still growing so quickly. In fact, we just saw a report from 451 Research that for the first time in their surveys, more than 50% of enterprises are adopting AI to some degree. So tell us about your background in HPC and AI. How did you get into all this?
Well, my background in HPC goes back many, many years to the end of my undergraduate days at the University of Virginia when I was an astronomy and physics major and did some part-time work at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory receiving headquarters, which was based in Charlottesville. And I got to use convex supercomputers for that work. And I'd always taken computer science classes along with my astronomy and physics. And so it was fun to use computing for an astronomy project at the end of my undergraduate days. I did decide to go to graduate school in astronomy, but so much of my work was computational. I was always drawn to that, using Cray supercomputers in those days. That finally, as I was getting close to the end of my dissertation, I realized as much as I love astronomy, I love the much broader applications of computing beyond astronomy, including astronomy, but beyond it. And so I really shifted into supercomputing. I then worked for a year and a half at the Arctic Region Supercomputing Center in Fairbanks, Alaska. It was a wonderful experience. I meant to go for 2 years. I really wanted to see that part of the world. I confess the second winter was a little cold, and that supercomputing conference was in San Diego. So I lost my nerve for the second winter, and I did move to San Diego partway through it. Worked at the San Diego Supercomputer Center for 5.5 years and learned a lot from Sid Caron, one of the original supercomputing center founders. I took all those lessons to Texas and created the Texas Advanced Computing Center, which I ran for a dozen years. And we elevated it from, not really something people had ever heard of to absolutely world class. And now I'm at Dell and trying to figure out how to help not just more academic institutions achieve that kind of success or success at a scale similar to that, but a lot of industry customers and a lot of government customers as well. So I get to talk to, now I'm in computing, which is as broad as in applications as it can be. And I'm talking to very broad customers, sets of customers as well about how to use it. And so I guess it's been a 20 plus career year in supercomputing. Maybe let's not count. It's been over 20 years.
Well, congratulations. Great story. So I'm sure with SC coming up, virtual SC, you'll be talking to a lot of customers. What will Dell Technologies be, highlighting, featuring at SC this month?
Well, Doug, I can't say too much about that because I can't take the wind out of our sails before that. So there will be announcements in some spaces, and you can get some hints from those spaces by, let's say, first I'll say we feature our customers a lot. One of those customers we featured many times over the years, but is doing some great new stuff during COVID is TGen, the Translational Genomics Institute in Phoenix. And so we might feature some kind of solution relevant to the kinds of genomics work that they do. And they've been doing a lot of interesting work in this pandemic related to COVID. In fact, they worked with our HPC and AI innovation lab right from the outset. We gave them extra cycles and worked with their staff to get their codes running on our systems. They've been one of the early players in the research into this virus. course, we're very happy about the work that our leading HPC customer, the Texas Advanced Computing Center, my old center, is doing. They are supporting over 40 projects related to COVID right now. You'll also see some customer success stories, not just in genomics and related to COVID, but in manufacturing and some other areas. And so you might expect to see some announcements around solutions and architectures related to those. And of course, we all know that while a lot of the world has embraced cloud computing for enterprise and for consumer apps, HPC has historically been an on-prem capability because you want fine-grained control over the systems. But we have been working with partners that are enabling HPC systems in cloud data centers and offering managed HPC services and looking at other delivery models for that. So really want to commend our systems, Vern Global, DXC, and some others. And so there may be some news around some things we're doing with them. I also want to emphasize, whereas I can't share too much now because it's 2 weeks for supercomputing, there will be stuff that we can't share publicly even during supercomputing. Dell tends to have a lot of NDA customer meetings during that week. So I would encourage folks to sign up for an NDA briefing that week to find out some of the stuff that we're not even sharing publicly then.
Okay, great. Thanks for including what you could on that score. Looking further out, I don't know, the next 2 to maybe even 5 years, are there, where do you see Dell moving, generally speaking, in AI and HPC?
Well, I think that's a pretty easy one because we had Dell Technologies World, our big annual conference for the company, a few weeks ago. And whereas we tend to keep things pretty close to the vest, Michael Dell and other leaders for the company revealed Apex. It's our new corporate-wide, I should say newly named corporate-wide initiative to offer everything as a service. It's not actually new. We've been laying the groundwork for this in a number of different solutions for the last few years, but it's all coming together under one vision now. And so you can imagine with a vision like Apex and making absolutely everything we do offerable as a service. And I don't just mean compute as a service or storage as a service. That could be purchasing laptops as a service and support as really everything will be available under that model. All the traditional models will remain. I mean, there are times where you want to buy something and times where you want to lease something and times where you want to pay only on demand and you're willing to pay a little bit more for occasional usage, but it's what you need when you need it. So all of these models become important. We're seeing the software infrastructure to enable this kind of flexibility in how you assemble hardware resources and which ones you use, and abstracting the hardware from your applications, but being able to marshal enough of those resources when needed, as needed, for what is needed. And so I think you're seeing a company that its history has been in hardware and then embrace the acquisition of not just EMC, but VMware, really embrace the software side of things as well in order to be able to make that hardware capability be what you need, when you need it, where you need it, as you need it.
Yeah.
I should say, Doug, without saying too much, that will absolutely apply to HPC and AI. And stay tuned for some announcements about that. Talk to us during SC and also NDA during SC, and we'll be able to say more about that.
Great stuff. Yeah, sort of that hyper hybrid workload driven kind of a strategy. Very interesting. So with regard to the Dell Technologies HPC community, what's your view of cross-discipline meetings like that? You mentioned that the company's very customer driven. How does that feed into this?
That's a great question. So I was in charge of the March Dell Technologies HPC community meeting here in Austin, and I had a wonderful agenda with great speakers and some fun events. Everything was all set up. And then the Friday before the meeting happened, the mayor declared a state of local health emergency. All large meetings were banned, and we were evaluating that day what to do anyway. Mayor made it really easy for us. So we canceled that meeting. There were no cases in Austin at that time, but I do think it was the right thing to do. There probably, as we know now, probably were cases in Austin at that time, but none detected at that time. It was the right thing to do, but it became really clear weeks in that we weren't going to have our summer meeting at ISC either. So once that became clear, we said, look, we're a customer-driven company, and our HPC, as you well know, the HPC community is big in dollar spend, but it's relatively small in number of customers. There are still many companies that have not yet embraced HPC. They all will. So we have lots of growth in this space. People's needs for compute grow even faster than Moore's law, which requires assembling these larger virtual computers, these clusters, these supercomputers. So we didn't want to lose the community that we built. So I evaluated this, and there were two options, right? One is to have virtual conferences, and the path I picked was to go the other way. We used the word community. Let's really make it. Let's have fine-grained once a week events, and that's what we do. Instead of making a 2-day virtual event, we have an hour-long event every week. It's completely optional for everybody. It's completely free. But we bring in different speakers from all three stakeholder groups, from Dell, from our technology partner ecosystem, and from our customer and user communities. So all three of those stakeholder groups get to present in this, ask questions, and it's really been nice. It's a source of continuous conversation with some customers. And you see some come in one week and maybe you don't see them again for a few weeks, but mostly they're pretty regular about it, and it's growing. And we try to keep it fun. We ask everybody in the chat window to say where they're calling in from, as well as what they do and what their role is. And feel free to introduce themselves to the whole community and to connect with each other one-on-one. We're really trying to make it a good community and make it fun. And in that regard, we're even going to have a fun whiskey tasting event at the end of SC just for our customer community. And I guess for some reason let me get the right side here. Yeah, there we go. They sort of decided that I might be a good person to host that. So it looks like we might be hosting a little customer event around that as well. It's a fun community. We try to make. I had a lot of fun activities planned in Austin for it, but we're going to try to keep it fun and keep it close and keep people talking and sharing, and not just that, sharing lessons, sharing experiences, sharing ideas. It's not just about having the event. It continues to be, how do we advance the state of HPC? How do we advance how HPC is used to create real impact? So more and more, I'm guiding the presenters to share lessons for all three stakeholder groups at the end of their presentations. And we're really going to start emphasizing that after SC. Every presenter will be required to share their best feedback for all three stakeholder groups at the end of their presentations.
Very good. Great, Jay. Well, it was great to reconnect with you today, and best of luck.
Thank you.
SC and with all your other work.
And congratulations on your gig at Inside HPC. Really happy to have you there and have a great source of news and information shared by Inside HPC in our HPC community.
Oh, well, thank you, Jay.